Meghan O'Malley, AAG Talent, Debate Moderator. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Vice President, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Stop. Please don't interrupt. Please don't interrupt. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Vice President, please, somebody listen to me. Thank you. Thank you, listening. Thank you. 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 Thank you.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Electoral Dysfunction, the show where comedians and experts debate the news of the week from the safety of their quarantine. I'm your host, Tom Brennan. Thank you for being with us for another week. And what a week. So much has happened this week. So much news has happened. I recorded this opening earlier today, and a joke I made was rendered irrelevant by the time we wrapped our recording. So I had to re-record the opening. So with that in mind, I'm not even going to waste any time. Ned Thorne, star wipe us to the first guest. Joining us now, our Electoral Dysfunction's old friend, Geoff Grimwood. Oh, sure, no problem.
No, yeah, cancel it. Just listen. Just do what cancel it. Right, and then if need be, start the petition or just watch it, and then when it hits 25,000, have Freeform rescue it. This is not rocket science. Cool. All right, tell me when it's done.
Hey,
Tommy.
Hey, Geoff. Sorry to interrupt your call there. Wow. So what's going on? You told me when you asked to come on the show, you've got a new job. What's going on? Talk to me about it.
Oh yeah, I guess you don't read the trades, Tommy. Okay.
No.
I'm not gonna get into the here and there and every step of the way. Why go into gory detail? And some of it is under NDA. But I have been appointed and confirmed and seated in the chair of President of Content.
Wow, the president of content for who?
Everyone.
I didn't know we had one president for all content. Well, congratulations, Mr. President. That's a big deal.
That's this close to being pejorative these days. But yeah, no.
Good point. President
to you, Tommy, I'm Geoff. Don't worry about it.
Well, I appreciate that, Geoff Grimwood, president of content. Welcome back to Electoral Dysfunction. And not a moment too soon. Things are pretty rough for content out there. News broke this week. Broadway going to stay closed until at least May of 2021. Disney, a few other companies announced that they're just going to be moving theatrical releases, officially bit the bullet. They're putting them up online on their streaming services. Netflix canceled Glow, which is a crime as far as I'm concerned. And Mr. President, if you could look into that, I would appreciate it. But I guess we're at a perilous moment in this virus. Production's halted on things. The Batman just got halted for COVID-19. What's the plan? What are you going to be doing to keep content rolling out for all of us folks trapped at home, Mr. President?
Well, Tommy, you said the key phrase there, which is content must continue to roll out.
Yeah.
And in order to roll something out, you must have something to roll out. Well, Here's the deal, my friend. We've got more than enough in the metaphorical vault and several literal vaults, as it were. We have, if you read the trades, maybe you'd have a better understanding of but you probably even whatever level of informed you've got, Tommy. There is constantly more being produced. Even in this era where there are so many outlets and so many eyeballs, there have been for literally decades and decades, there has been so much more produced, created, and never released for whatever reason. So much more than could ever actually see the light of day. And so now is its moment. You know,
So wow, so we're putting out like every show ever.
like it's
in the
basically
can.
this is in terms of the industry of entertainment and content release. This is very much like, say, the first week of April was for 2020 was for all of us, where that was when you were like, I do have this can of sardines, you know, or like, millet. What do I do with millet? When did I buy this millet? There's
Sure.
stuff that you've had just kind of on hand. It may have moved with you from apartment to apartment.
Oh yeah.
You know, and the stuff that you weren't even willing, you didn't even feel right sort of sending to your kid's school on food drive day, you know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
stuff that's a tier below that in terms of kitchen wise. I'm going to tell you right now, Tommy, and I'm going to look you right in the camera eye and tell you that everything we're rolling out here is worth rolling out.
All right.
Every bit of it.
Well, your office sent over this list of shows. Now, I've never seen this list before, but you are intimately familiar, as I understand it, with every detail about these shows. So I'm gonna go through a few of them now and see what there is to see in the coming year. So this is an interesting title, right up at the top: Kissing Cousins. Walk me through what that show's about.
Well, that one is it's sort of a comedy drama comedy, a sort of com-dram comedy. And that one is about, basically, it's a James Brooks style, many unconnected stories that end up over time revealing themselves to be very connected, in which people fall in love and realize, oh, they shouldn't have fallen in love. And the person who helps them through that moment, these people sort of run into each other, reeling from this difficult situation. They soothe and take care of each other, and they start to fall in love. And then they realize that they shouldn't fall in love. And then they end up going to another. Basically, imagine a world where everyone is very attractive, but they are also all maybe related. I'm not going to give the whole thing away, but yeah. It's basically a series of like, gosh darn it.
Right.
In the romantic, filial, genetically iffy sphere.
Sounds like it'll be real popular in Amish country. Let's also take a look. This next one sounds interesting. All Dogs Go to Kevin.
Yeah, so this was, in the really thick of the Kevin James era.
Oh, yeah.
They were just shooting out every Kevin James. Like, if he had a half-hour break, we would, because I wasn't in charge at that time, but they would make something out of it. And so this one was basically, every episode is 2 segments. The first segment is your sort of standard Animal Planet dog rescue kind of thing, where someone alerts them, hey, this dog needs some help, or this dog's very tough to deal with. It's cases of neglect, cases of, just really unique, special doggies that, like, even the most well-meaning of peoples can't take care of. Gradually, these people come, do their best, but spoiler alert, by the middle of every episode, they've decided, unfortunately, this is not the right home for that dog. Guess what home is the right home for that dog? Kevin James. Yeah. And then the dog goes to Kevin. It gets to know the existing herd of dogs at Kevin's. And from there, well, hijinks ensue.
I could only assume. Real big name guest star in the pilot episode here. Talk to me about that choice.
Listen, it was unusual that at that time President Obama wanted to be in a sort of juiced up, ultimately technically reality show, but you can't go wrong aligning yourselves and being seen in favor of doggies. And Mr. Obama, Mr. President Obama.
He would have been president then. It says here 2011. So yeah.
He signs his emails to me, Barry, and so I'm not sure what the actual protocol is, but President Obama wanted a little help with that doggy Bo, because in between you and me, Bo, I've heard has ended up having a delightful personality, but he's among the uglier presidential doggies.
Oh,
I do not care for that particular kind of doggy. Sure. So I mean, I'm sure it's very nice, but I just don't like those ones where it's like my face is a sock that went in the dryer for too long. I don't like that kind of puffy dog where you can't see their eyes. Anyway, the president was having a hard time melding with that dog, making friends with it. And so he actually took the dog to Kevin James's estate and basically let Bo spend some time with all these other dogs who presumably told that dog their stories and told it should be grateful to live in the White House, before it was quite so polluted. And eventually, by the end, they played a couple games of checkers as they watched the dogs play, the president and the King of Queens. And they, it was wild seeing the dogs try to defend Kevin James from the Secret Service agents who they could tell were ready to mix it up if anything came up, you know, and so were the dogs. It was wild. Like, it was two powerful men with intensely loyal security details.
Sure.
It was wild. Yeah.
Boy, I'd
All
watch
dogs
a
go to
show.
Kevin. Yeah,
Look,
I mean,
I'm not going to tell you what to do, but if you have Kevin James' number, I'd watch a show where he and a bunch of dog Secret Service become president. This is an interesting, unexpected idea. Write it down.
Let me just jot that down.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I'll move on to this next title. I'm curious about this. Me and Pee Wee makes 3.
Yeah. So, do you remember Mr. T?
Of course.
Mm-hmm. Right. He is
Who could
ultimately 2 men. He is Mr. T,
Mm-hmm.
and then he is, well, he has changed his original legal birth name from whatever it was. I did him the service of not looking into it, but
Sure.
he changed. He now says that his original non-character name is Bob Parks, and so basically, Mr. T, Bob Parks, and Paul Rubens / Pee Wee Herman, who actually sends apparently to prefer to go by Paul Rubens, Pee Wee Herman. It's the 3 of them. Mr. Parks, Mr. T, sure. Mr. Rubens Herman. It's the 3 of them basically traveling the country in a pretty naked rehash of The Simple Life, Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie's The Simple Life, and they go to, like, you know, farms, actually the exact same farms that The Simple Life went to, and those farmers are like, where does it end? And then, you know, hijinks ensue.
Yeah. That's a lot of personalities for 2 men in a car.
Right, but there's a lot of, like, Mr. T getting into a disagreement with the farmer, and Pee Wee going, Arr! And, like, trying to, you know, like, deal with it, but it kind of just making it worse. And then Mr. T runs off, you know, and says, I'm not, you know, I've had enough of this. I pity you fools. And then he runs off and then comes back around with now, like, he's put a shirt on under his overalls and he's put on a hat, taken off some of his chains, replaced them with beads. And then he comes in and says, hi, I'm Mr. Parks. Sorry about my friend, Mr. T. Tell me again how to harvest this corn. And then he's very reasonable. So it's sort of like 2 agents of chaos, and then one of them turns into Mr. Reasonable. You know, it's the kind of show that needs to be 90 minutes, but we throws it into an hour slot. And I think that the HBO audience is going to enjoy it.
Hard to believe that any network would have passed on that back in the day. I look forward to what you can do out there, President Geoff Grimwood, President of Content. We're so glad to see that things are trending upward for you. Thank you for being with us today. We're going to have to head on to our next segment. Before we go, anything one last thing to give the viewers to know about what's coming in content or to boost the old mood?
Let's just say that there have been a lot of sourdough starters dumped into the water and just down people's sinks and toilets. And if you think you can dump that robust of an organism into a fertile space like the sewer system and not have something incredible begin to happen, well, just watch out for Blobs of 2020. When that new piece of content, because that just takes one guy in a hazmat suit and a camera, when that starts to roll out next year, because Blobs of 2020 is, well, let's just say, if there's any organism that's going to do a better job than I at this important position, it's going to be evolved in the sewers, maybe under my feet right now.
Well, I look forward to that. Both that's kind of both an exciting pitch and a terrible look at the things to come. Geoff Grimwood, President of Content, thank you for being with us. Ned Thorne, star wipe me to the panel.
Always a pleasure, Tommy.
And join me in welcoming this week's panel, and it is a great one, jam-packed. It's like the Electoral Dysfunction All-Star game. First up, she is a filmmaker, comedian, actor, writer, all kinds of great things. Her film 3 Days just finished up a successful festival run. You can find it on YouTube now. Please welcome back Julie Sharbutt. Hey, Julie, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. You know, as best as can be.
It's a big year for all things considered, being our go-to qualifier on all things. Well, welcome back.
Thank you. I am in California and I love to hike, and I have been on successful hikes this week because the air is finally good enough to go outside. So that's a good thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hey, that's good. Congratulations on having your air back.
Thank you.
Next up, very funny comedian as well, host of the Revolution podcast and the Witchcast podcast. Please welcome back Kate Moran. Hey, Kate, how are you?
Good. Just riding out the chaos. Just riding it out.
It's all we can do at this point.
Enjoying the roller coaster, yeah.
Yep, deep breaths, and just every morning I wake up and I'm like, well, something happened.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm starting to just not look at my phone first thing in the morning. I went from being like, what happens, to being like, whatever it is, I can't control it.
Smart.
Let's go get some coffee and come back to it. Next up, very excited to have him back with us. He is a writer, bon vivant, storyteller, all kinds of great things. The pop culture priest himself, Jim McDermott. Hello, Jim. How are you, my friend?
Hey, Tom. I'm doing okay. You know, it's funny. I'm actually the reverse of you. I had been avoiding the news, but once the Trump has COVID thing, it was like I have to check just to know what is this country I'm living in. It's like
right.
How bad, you know, the bottom keeps descending. It's like I'm at a point where I need to know how low we've gotten.
Yeah, well, we do pay for that White House building, so I'd say, you know, you have a right to know. For me at this point, I'm like, ugh, who knows what could occur. Well, welcome back, Jim. And finally, no longer can I call him editorial columnist for the New York Daily News. He left that wonderful tabloid. Still, check out the website. First 10 articles are free this past week. Future columnist for the opinion page of Bloomberg. Oh, my goodness. So I'll do a quick check of anything we may have said during the primary on this show. Please welcome back to the show, Robert George. Robert, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. It's doing great.
It's doing great.
Look, they do the cliche of, you know, as well as can be expected and all this other stuff. But look, I consider myself blessed. You know, I had a wonderful, fantastic 4.5 year run at the Daily News, and I'll have lots of friends and stuff there. And now I'm getting ready to start on a new sojourn, a new adventure with Bloomberg Opinion. So and given what's going on in the world and the country, it'll be interesting to have a different platform to opine on. So things are good for me, and I hope I can take the optimism that I'm feeling personally and pray for the future of the country.
Well, we need your opinions now more than ever.
And we've got a priest on the show today to help me pray. So this is
right. Well, with that in mind, let's take a look back at this week. Now, I feel like the calendar week that ended in October 10th felt, for me, like the previous weeks, it felt like each day new bad news happened. Whereas this week was just sort of like a weird vortex void of bad news that I looked up, and it was Friday. We didn't have our anchor bad news at the end of the week of say like the president being diagnosed with COVID-19 or other bad things that have happened in the previous week. We didn't have our kickoff scandal on a Sunday night like the taxes a few weeks back, but instead it was just the president. I believe left the hospital I think on Monday and immediately just he's on that Regeneron. He's on those steroids. He's tweeting like crazy. He walked away from a stimulus deal and said we wouldn't have it until after the election. Turned out that was very unpopular. So now he came storming back for a new stimulus deal, which the Senate says it probably won't pick up. He co-hosted Rush Limbaugh's show on Friday, dropped an F-bomb, which I just think of like there was a different time where if the president said the F word 3 weeks before the election, that would be the biggest story. And I feel like yesterday, I don't know about you all, but someone was like, did you hear what the president said? I was like, what? And like, he said the F word. And I was like, oh, thank God. That's
that
fine.
word, that one. Yeah, great.
Knock yourself out. Yeah, say it all you want, pal.
It's yours. You can have it.
Literally, the president going on Rush Limbaugh and saying fuck is the least bad thing he did this week.
Well, the funny thing is,
while a vice presidential debate happened. I'm sorry, Robert, go ahead.
No, I just quickly say, he could end up putting Rush Limbaugh out of business because Rush Limbaugh is on regular terrestrial radio, which is still overseen by the FCC, and the F-bomb is like one of those really big no-nos, and I don't know whether the financial penalties attached to the local station or to the network that puts it out, or both. But it could be since we're not covered by the FCC, it could be a big fucking deal, to quote the former vice president.
Yeah. Yeah,
he should go on and say it all a lot more times then. Let's just keep it going.
What if this is what takes down Trump? Like,
The
Rush- turns out
FCC.
Rush doesn't have any money to pay for that. He's furious. He's like, fine, here's everything the president told me in secret.
I mean, it's
Vote
like,
Biden.
That wouldn't change anything, though.
Mr. President, what are you doing? I'm dying here. I mean, look, that's an
Yikes.
awkward choice of words, but yes.
Oh my goodness. And today on Saturday, while we're recording this, or I believe right before we're recording this, he had hosted a campaign rally on the White House South Lawn. He went out to the balcony, Mussolini style, and rhapsodied to his people. 2,000 people were invited, I believe. Only a few.
Teal shirts, red hats.
Yeah. I
Very
believe only in the
smart.
hundreds
Whole
showed up,
thing.
but no masks encouraged, no safety encouraged. So
How many
last week,
people- Tom, how many showed up?
I don't know the exact count, but it was in the hundreds. It was not the full 2,000. Christy just got out of the hospital this morning, so
Thank
he
God.
probably didn't have time.
And he counts for at least 2.5 people.
Yeah. Oh man,
It was easy. I had to.
you earned it. She's a New Jersey resident. She can
I
do
now
that.
live here, so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's the rule. You can say whatever you want about and shame whatever your current or former governors. I got a lot to say about George Pataki and Elliot Spitzer. We'll save that for after the election. So I guess last week we posed a question and it sounded like a joke, but weirdly it was a sincere moment, which was, is the president still alive? This week I'm going to pose a question that sounds like a joke, but I mean it sincerely. Has the president officially lost his mind? Like, is that what's happening?
Well,
Julie,
in the
go
most
ahead.
fundamental sense, we have no idea because of the drugs that he's on. I mean, like for any normal person, like it's impossible to know. I got a flu shot last week, and I thought that I was going to fall off a cliff and just like be rubble for the rest of my life. And that was for like a 24-hour period. I was like, oh, this has been a terrible mistake. And he is on much stronger drugs than a flu shot. So in that respect, like, who knows? But there does seem to be a turned up to 11 quality to his tweets this week. So I don't know.
Well, it's not just his tweets, Julie. It's, as we said, dropping the F-bomb in reference to Iran. So I mean, in a normal world, if take the F word out of it, the fact that the president goes on a radio show and muses about dropping the atomic bomb on Iran or any foreign enemy. I mean, usually presidents will say things, well, nothing's off the table. They couch it in these kind of words. But instead he says, oh, well, Iran knows that we could, we can bomb the blank out of them. And so that's a little bit problematic. He then gives another interview with this conservative site, the American Independent or something like that. And
the American Independent is a progressive site. I want to fact check you there.
I apologize.
I assume this was probably, knowing my conservative sites, let's just go with, we'll call it the Constitution Eagle,
Something
don't
like
tread
that.
on me .biz.
But he's on video about this, and he talks about how he's been attacked, and he's been triumphant over all of these attacks, and he says, like 3 in a row, he says, well, I beat off the Mueller investigation. I beat off impeachment. I beat off this, and I'm thinking, is there nobody here saying, Mr. President, I don't think that's quite the phraseology that you want to, you want to use here.
They all have COVID. They can't be there.
Well,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Who's in the White House right now? Like the day staff? And that's it?
This is like blank
Daniel
check.
Craig
Like,
and Joe Pesci
Home
are the
Alone.
only ones there. They're broken in.
Yeah.
Very Home Alone stuff.
Exactly.
I would suggest. I mean, I think Julie is right that I don't think he's like clinically nuts or crazy and things like that. But the fact that the president, we know definitely he's had a steroid treatment, and as well as some of these other cocktails. And when you're on medication, your head gets fuzzy and you start sounding rather strange. And I mean, and that's what happens to regular people. But regular people, when that happens to them, they stay at home. They take sick days, and they recover. And the President of the United States is deciding to put this all out there, for whatever reason. So it's troubling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's certainly that.
I would think the nuclear codes count as operating heavy machinery, right?
Yeah. Well, and then add in.
I think we've got a title for the show.
That might be an episode title. But
I always find with him and the question about is he well or is he, what's his mental health? It's interesting to me because of course he's not well. Like, and it's not about looking at his behavior. He has COVID and he didn't have a mild case. Like, it's very clear what happens if you have COVID, that it affects your mental health, it affects your energy level. We're not necessarily seeing it, but it's clearly happening. So I'm always sort of, he can present whatever he wants, and he's very good at getting the press to sort of buy in a way, but I feel like ignore him. He's clearly not well, and his behavior, if it surprises us, it should surprise us because he has COVID, And
from a number of the medical talking heads, and I don't always, I'm always nervous about people who decide to try and diagnose other people from a distance, but some of the pulmonary specialists and so forth, their assessment based on what we know and how the White House is intentionally not sharing updates on the president's health is that yes, he had a severe case of it, and at some point he had, I guess, COVID-induced pneumonia, and that's why he's had some of these cocktails. And they do. They take a horrific toll on the body, and you're almost to give the devil his due. The fact that his narcissism and his megalomania is so intense that it manages to prop him up to be out, to allow himself to be filmed to show that he could actually stand is somewhat impressive. It's also scary as hell because that combination in terms of what it's doing with his mind, and we're here, and he goes on Fox on what it was, Thursday morning, I guess.
Yeah.
Maria Bartiromo, Fox Business. Apparently, even he was so hyped up on steroids that even it was too much even for Fox and Friends, so they put him on Fox Business. And he goes on for this hour rant, and Kamala Harris is a monster, and all this other kind of stuff. But it's the drugs talking.
And it's also
I feel
like, you go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, it's also like if he's a master of anything, he's a master of controlling his own image, right? And he had like a 72-hour period where he wasn't able to tweet or talk to the cameras or speak for himself. He was speaking by all these surrogates, the doctors and all these people. I'm sure he's also feeling like a rush to recontrol his own image and serve up what he wants the world to see of him.
I just feel, the thing I was going to add is that I feel like it's short term. Like, I've been reading some of the stories about Boris Johnson, who also had a serious case, although I think it sounds like Trump's is more serious, but Boris Johnson hasn't come back. There was an initial surge of like, he's fine and we're all going to get back on board, but he has changed. It diminished his energy in a somewhat permanent way. And so whether we believe that like Trump is like back, I would not expect it to last. Like, maybe to the election, but don't expect that same guy, the guy that it'll be a different insane guy in a second term, I think.
That's a fair point.
Maybe that energy can animate his corpse, and he can just keep kicking.
Maybe he's been dead the whole time.
It's just zombie
just,
Trump.
It's just that nervous system and ego that's driving him.
I mean, listen, we have, and this is coming from a person wearing a skeleton on her sweatshirt. We have a full moon on Halloween this year. Lots of things are very possible.
With that, Kate Moran, your broader thoughts on the president's health and well-being.
Oh
And,
yeah, no,
what happened
it's
this week.
it's bad. It's definitely, I agree with what everyone said. I think, he's always been kind of but with the medication, for lack of a better term, and not to diminish mental health, but he's always been an incredible egomaniac, narcissist, asshole. So, now that he's on like a ton of steroids, like Robert and everyone's been saying, it's definitely amplified. I think he's going to crash and burn at some point, though, because, as much as he likes to believe and his followers like to believe he's the new coming of Iron Man or whatever, like, he's still human, and you can't go that long, I think, without some sort of, especially as sick as we believe that he is, without some sort of repercussion. So I am curious to see how the coming days and weeks pan out. I don't know.
I was thinking about that when news broke this week that I think it was the Biden camp that insisted that it was the debate commission that planned a virtual debate, and then Trump threatened to walk away if it was virtual. A lot of people on the right, not people on the right, that's not fair. A lot of people in Trump world who said, "Oh, this is unprecedented. There can't be a virtual debate." Never mind the fact that the third ever televised debate in the history of this country was a virtual debate. Nixon was in LA and Kennedy was in New York.
Yeah.
And actually, if you go back,
the moderator, it was real. The moderators were in Chicago. It was that much of everybody in different cities. Yeah.
Zoom's been around for so long.
Zoom has been around for, yeah.
This is why I think he's smart that he wouldn't allow it. Because you put him in what feels like a Zoom situation, and you're just going to see an old man who doesn't know how to work the button.
Well, I think that was my thought when his team walked away. I think that was as much a power move as it was also probably people in his team thinking like he's not going to be ready for it. So let's take advantage of this moment where they changed the rules to be like, then we're out of here. But really, we're like, thank God we can get him out of here.
I'm taking my ball and I'm going home, and none of you can play anymore. Yeah,
I'm sure the team. The article came out from Vanity Fair shortly after the president's joyride, where he went to wave to people. Where Robert and I were talking about this. You will be if you read this article, you'll be in the bizarre, unique moment of feeling sympathy for Donald Trump Jr., who in that article is quoted as being very concerned about his dad going outside, very concerned about his father, as any son would be.
The only one. Jared
and Ivanka were like, yeah, get out there, which I found very odd. But that, I imagine that sentiment was felt by many people in Trump world, who, were probably very grateful that the debate commission changed the rules so that they could appeal to his sense of ego and say, like, you can't let them bully you around, let's walk, which he probably got on board with. And so that debate has since, the second debate that was planned for this week, the town hall debate, is canceled, saving the lives of countless diner goers from the Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Ohio areas.
Joe Biden very smartly said, okay, if he's going to do that, I'm going to do a town hall by myself with George Stephanopoulos, and which Trump did one with Stephanopoulos a few weeks ago. That was the one where he started talking about herd mentality. You may remember. And so Biden's going to do that, and good for Biden. It's fascinating to see how this president is. He's been trying. They've been trying to move on from COVID. Even though spikes are up all across the country. So he's trying to move on from it, but the debate commission was exactly right. It was the next debate was scheduled for Thursday, and that would have been exactly 14 days from when Trump announced that he had tested positive. And 14 days is supposedly, the preferred window of when you're supposed to be quarantined. But if the people who were assessing that Trump had COVID-induced pneumonia, the recommendation is 20 days. because of what ammonia, sorry, ammonia. That's what you're supposed to drink if you have COVID. I keep
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Pneumonia. If you got
when you're not injecting your sunlight.
If you have COVID-induced pneumonia, you are considered to be more contagious because you're coughing even more and spewing up even more and sending more aerosols into the into the atmosphere. So given that, 3 weeks would have been more appropriate for the president to be quarantined, but instead, he runs out into the public just 4 days later. So the commission on presidential debate says, look, the White House won't share when his last negative test was, what his current positive status is. They won't cooperate with the CDC on contact tracing and all this other kind of stuff. So why should we expose not only Vice President Biden, anybody else who's any of the regular citizens in the town hall, tech people? Why should we expose them to this? And they were absolutely right.
Yeah, the town hall part of it is what really keyed into me. In general, I think they were right to cancel it, but I was just thinking to myself, like, why would you insist if you're definitely sick? And this is the debate where a bunch of undecided voters will be there. If nothing else, you might kill people who are deciding votes, or at least get them sick, at which point they might be like, wheel me to that school gym because I got to vote no on this guy because he killed me. I'm going to get some payback. I'm curious, thoughts on the debate, because I am someone, I enjoy the presidential debate season, and I know there's kind of back and forth on, are they even really debates and this and that and the other. But I think I find them, not useful because I'm a partisan hack and I make my mind up when the party tells me to. But I think there is the drama of it. I think back to 2012, where Barack Obama was sort of crushed by Mitt Romney in the first debate, but had that second debate and was able to sort of rebound and help rebound the polls. But a thought I had this year, even before the president got sick, even before this debate over the debates happened, was that, like, after that first presidential debate this year, and after the vice presidential debate, I was like, who needs another one of these? Like, this is not a different time. This is not, I think, and I don't even mean that from of course it's, Biden and Harris. Like, even if you're a Trump supporter, or if you were on the fence but leaning Trump, I would imagine your mind was made up after that first debate, one way or another. And I'm just curious, are we upset? Are we sad that there won't be at least one more debate, potentially both debates canceled? How do we feel about that?
I will say no, I'm fine with there being no more debates, because they're not debates. I mean, they're not ideas. It's just watching Trump just go as low as he possibly can. And that's sort of what it's come to. It's like cornered raccoon syndrome. But I also think that it's, when they get in the corners and they're just like, it's that. But I will say I saw something interesting. It was a town hall or something with interviews with undecided voters, and I've had a good chuckle at who could possibly be an undecided voter at this point in the game. I sort of didn't understand, though, that interpretation for some people, undecided doesn't necessarily mean undecided to vote for Trump or to vote for Biden. Undecided voter for a lot of folks means deciding whether to vote at all. Like, that I thought was a very interesting, clarifying idea that I had not considered, because and of course in my mind, go vote for a trash can if you want to, just go vote for Mickey Mouse, go vote for somebody. But this idea of people being like, I want someone to gin up enthusiasm in me to go celebrate them. I found that interesting, if not a terribly compelling reason not to vote.
That's a really good point. And particularly when you think, so many of us, certainly the people on this show, we're in big cities, we can be many times very close to a lot of the direct effects of this administration. I can appreciate that if you live in a small town where there's not a lot of politics discussed in general, this might seem like a bizarre TV show that you see somewhere. and it doesn't really, you don't feel that it affects your everyday life, even though it does, but you don't have that feeling. And if you don't have that feeling, then why bother? I feel I am someone who has I've moved from being someone who's like, how could you never vote, to I feel like we vote shame this country a lot. And like, there's moments, if you knew nothing, if you were like dropped, if you had, let's say you like just checked out, disappeared, and just got dropped on the planet during the first presidential debate, you knew nothing about either man's history, you knew nothing about either of their platforms, I could not blame you for being like, I gotta choose here. I mean, this one guy's not yelling like a jerk, but even so, he's kind of getting mad. I'm just seeing two old men yell at each other. I have to decide between this. I can appreciate that dilemma.
There were two interesting undecided moments this week. One where NBC got kind of embarrassed, where they found out that one of the people on their Monday town hall, who was there in Miami with Biden, presented themselves as an undecided person, but they had been on an MSNBC forum a week or two before, and they were out there as a Biden voter. Oops, come on, NBC, do a little bit better on your background checks there. And then the other one, though, was that I just literally saw this morning. Shaquille O'Neal announced that he's 48 years old, and he's voting for the very first time. And I mean, that, which kind of blows your mind. I mean, here's somebody who has been, a all-star basketball player,
and movie legend,
Kazam or whatever.
Kazam. Get it right.
Shazam.
Kazam.
Shazam was something different. But the four world NBA championships, 3 with the Lakers, one with the Miami Heat, and has been has been in the media for close to 30 years, and he announced that he's never voted. Part of me is kind of irritated by that, but part of me also says, well, he's announcing it and he's owning it. So maybe he'll be influencing somebody else out there, saying, you're never too old to get on the civic engagement train. Especially
just because he's endorsed people in campaigns before, but apparently didn't vote for them. He endorsed Chris Christie for governor.
Didn't he run for sheriff somewhere down in Florida?
Yeah, he was a sheriff's deputy.
Sheriff's deputy for something.
Official volunteer sheriff's deputy in Miami. And there's a great story of how he witnessed a guy throw a bottle at a gay couple, and he followed that guy and announced himself as a sheriff's deputy and made him stay there till the sheriff showed up. I was just imagining that bigot, of all the nights to be a bigot, the night when Shaq is driving by. And then I'm just imagining him when Shaq gets out of the car. It's like, freeze, I'm a sheriff's deputy. He's like,
what? He's got a little sticker.
Yeah, what is going on?
He's wearing a Kazam t-shirt or something.
Yeah. Oh man.
Well, I think it ties into the larger issue of voter suppression that we are talking about also right now for this election. I've done canvassing for Hillary, and I do calls now for Joe Biden, and I've spoken with a lot of undecided people who have said I'm undecided or I'm just not voting. I spoke with a few people who were like, I'm just not voting during 28. What was it? What year? 2016. Yeah, when I upped my meds, 2016. So then but I think it's also when you feel as if the party as if the system is not for you, as if you have no power or control, that what you do doesn't matter anyway, because I think our government system unfortunately has become sort of that enigma of the Electoral College decides the presidency, the popular vote, as we've been shown multiple times, does not ultimately matter. And a lot of times it just feels I think unreachable. There's why do I vote? What's the point? And it's unfortunate that we live in a system like that. And I talked about this, I think, on the show before. I personally feel a lot of conflict as well. Of course, Joe Biden wasn't my top choice for a candidate, but if you're looking at 2 old white men just arguing, and you're like in a small town or whatever, you live in a lower income neighborhood, like what is going to incite you to vote? Like what is going to make you feel like you actually do have a voice and matter? Because it just feels like a lot of the same old shit, you know?
Yeah. We don't encourage people to vote. I mean, we do, but like the society, like there's these drives and like people have chosen to, but the government, in my experience, doesn't encourage enough people to vote. And I think that's a thing that it took me a while to get on board with. When I first got involved in politics and activism, I was very much like, how could you not vote? Blah, 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 blah. But now I've kind of rewired to what are we doing to encourage these people to take a risk? And this year more than ever, it's a risk to go outside. Still,
Yeah.
Like it is a literal risk of one's life to go vote this year, and it's a lot to ask of people. And I think I'm seeing a better job from activists and from the Democratic Party certainly than I've seen in previous years to try and encourage people to take that risk. But I don't think that we are respectful enough of what an ask that is of people.
It's a privileged thing, I think, to be able to vote.
Yeah,
100%. I was going to say, I remember there's an article that will never leave me, and forgive me for the anecdotal analogy, but there's an article from the special election of Doug Jones down in Alabama. There was this woman who is a Democrat in Alabama and who has voted her whole life, and for the last 20 years has been driving through like the farm country to pick up farm workers on election day and drive them to the polls and then drive them back to finish their shift. And if that woman didn't take it on herself for 20 years to do that, those people would be completely disenfranchised, because those aren't people who can take a day off of work. Those aren't people who can like find somebody to cover them. They need that work and they have no other transportation. They need to get to the, you know, they have no transportation to the polls. And that's such a small anecdote, but it's like, that's the entire country. Or like the driver's license disenfranchisements that's happening all over states. You know, it really like it's made it hard for people who can't afford it. It's made it for people who aren't like physically able. It's an impossibly like crazy thing to.
In a weird way, I feel like what we lack right now is like the daily political machine. I mean, and I know that there's
like the Daily Family in Chicago.
Yeah, sorry, I'm from Chicago originally. Because I mean, many downsides to those sorts of ways of playing politics, but you always knew that organization was there for you, right? That organization expected stuff from you, like you will vote for this person, that's a problem. But you could always go to it too and say, these are the problems in my house, and they would fight for you. Like unions, when we have unions, if we still have unions, fight for people. And in a weird way, it feels like, as problematic as those institutions become, we need people like you're talking about that, and organizations that are really there for you and aren't just there for you every 2 or 4 years. And I think that's a problem as well. We come knocking on people's doors to vote when there's a presidential election or there's a midterm election, maybe, right. But otherwise we're not there for them. And what is that? That's just the political organizations using those people, using all of us in a way.
I think this year, 2020, has been a big kind of shakeup, and, you know, astrologically, the planets all agree, but it's been like a very big kind of breakdown of structure of our trust and ideals and foundations that we used to trust in. I mean, look at the police force. I mean, I was taught growing up that like if something was wrong, you go to the cops. Like the cops can be trusted and they will make you safe. I come from a place of privilege. I don't have dark skin. I'm not going to be attacked or brutalized by the police necessarily. And I think a lot of people are starting to wake up that all of these systems, the, you know, police enforcement, political systems, are not really created to help us, actually. That's actually, or at least they're not functioning that way. You know, however the intent was when they were first created, but that we have a lot of systemic problems within our country that I think call upon the individual now to say, okay, I'm a part of this community. What can I do to help make this better? Can I volunteer to help drive people to polls? Can I volunteer to run a polling place to take some of the load off of the silvers who are at risk, you know, of catching COVID? Can I run for city council and be the reflection of my community in at least a local sense? And I think that's, for me at least, where my focus is. And I think that's what we should be doing, is let's look at what we've always taken as the status quo and try and really make meaningful change.
What's interesting, and this jumps off of what you were talking about, Jim. Part of the reason, Democrats and particularly your coastal liberals get so like up in arms, I've seen, over the power that the evangelical right has in the Republican Party. One thing they do in the South is similar stuff to what you're talking about with what the Daily Machine used to do. Like they, have similar kind of organizations. They have those souls to the polls drive. Like they make a point to get their voters to vote. And interestingly enough, if there's a resurgence of the Democratic Party in the Sun Belt in like Texas, North Carolina, and Georgia, it is sort of a mix of, liberals moving to the cities, but also as the Republican Party becomes more unabashedly racist, you have a lot of black churches still organizing these souls to the polls drives as well, which are boosting Democratic numbers. And it's that infrastructure does exist. It just doesn't exist in, it unfortunately doesn't exist for our side the way it used to.
One of the more
my side. Sorry, Robert.
I don't even know what side I'm on. One of the more amusing things that happened over the last couple of weeks was when former governor of California, Pete Wilson, came out and endorsed Trump. Now, as Tom has pointed out a number of times on this show, I Robert George am the walking embodiment of I'm so old that I remember that X. And I'm so old, I remember when California was competitive for Republican candidates running statewide. I remember when California was, was Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon territory. And Pete Wilson, because he signed on to Prop 187, which basically, tried to say if you're undocumented, you're not getting any services, and basically turned Latino votes completely and totally against Republicans, and not just against Republicans, against a whole generation coming up. And you can't run statewide as a Republican in California anymore. Conversely, Texas Republicans from George W. Bush through Rick Perry and so forth took a completely different tact, actively recruited Latino votes, and as a result, they split, or if it's somewhere between, they regularly got between 40 and 60% of the Latino vote. Republicans did, and since Trump came along, the National Party has gone more in the Pete Wilson in the Pete Wilson direction than in the Texas direction, and as a result, you're now starting to see one of the reasons Texas is starting to trend bluer is, yes, it's some influx of voters coming in from California and some other places, but it's because Latinos are saying, okay, the Republican Party, the National Republican Party, is hostile to us, hostile to some of our aspirations, and so the Democrats are there opening up their arms for them, and it's I've seen this movie before.
Speaking of hostile, let's talk about what happened this week in the great state of Michigan. The FBI announced they busted a plan by a group known as, I'm going to make sure I got this right, the Wolverine Watchmen. The Wolverine Watchmen.
Shout out to New York Comic Con, which would be going on this weekend, but it's not now. And this is like a multiverse. Boom! Marvel. Happy
Comic Con weekend. The Wolverine Watchmen, a group of militia terrorists who had
their first draft name was Cornered Raccoon.
Cornered Raccoons, right? Sorry, the Cornered Raccoons. I feel like that was on a big whiteboard, and the people who got there early were really excited, and then someone got there late and was like, I got one note, the name. Plan's great. They plan to kidnap and try Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan. primarily over government overreach this year in mask mandates and other things related to COVID, but all kinds of stuff. So the FBI busted them. They stopped it before it could happen. Governor Whitmer and many people in the Democratic Party rightly highlighted the fact that this plan came about after the President of the United States, who as of this recording is still Donald John Trump, had tweeted liberate Michigan as well as other states that he felt had too many draconian measures. I still stand by the fact that I find it fascinating that he never said liberate New York, why he had family there and wanted them.
But it is important to say all of the states that he had tweeted out back in, I guess this is back in April, were Democratic governors were running the state.
Democratic governor run swing states, probably is a fair thing to say.
Yes,
Virginia, Minnesota,
Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Minnesota.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So the Trump campaign immediately responded by talking about how awful Governor Whitmer was and how she should be grateful that they let the FBI stop this.
She deserved it. Did you see what she was wearing? She was asking for it.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
I assume she was wearing like a Green Bay Packers jersey.
Well, actually, if she was in Michigan, if she was wearing a Green Bay Packers,
then
she would have no support. That they would be fully behind those Wolverine Watchmen.
So the Wolverine Watchmen, who I believe, again, the facts are still kind of murky here, but we're also members of the Boogaloo movement of white supremacy. Oh God, what a ridiculous name.
I just looked it up. Sometimes they call themselves Boogaloo Boys with an I.
Right. I keep waiting to read through the full list that the FBI has, and it's like the Butterscotch Gang. Who are they? Oh, they're white supremacists. God damn it.
Scar children.
Boogaloo Boys, what you gonna do?
Oh man, I'm gonna be.
They're terrorists. That's what they are.
They're terrorists. They're very bad.
Well,
but they all have ridiculous names.
A couple of facts that are
Stop me.
The
in their defense. No.
I know. The alleged leader, they might be more, rather than just like pure left-right dynamic, they might be somewhat anarchical because the alleged leader of this group was caught on video as being seemingly at least verbally hostile towards Trump. Now, I don't know whether that's because they don't trust Trump because they don't think he goes far enough, or what the issue is. So you got to keep that thought out there. But one of the other thoughts out there, this was a combined FBI and state the state attorney general. They combined the investigation and so half of these guys are being charged on federal crimes and half are being charged on state crimes. One of the important points, though, that does link them to Trump is that the Michigan,
white supremacy.
Well, I'm just.
That's the umbrella.
Yeah, but no, I'm making a factual point here that the state attorney general, the Michigan state attorney general, said that after Trump's liberate tweet went out, and you remember you had these militia folks storming the Capitol shortly after that, and the attorney general revealed that they identified several of the people who were later arrested were at this storming of the Capitol and they used that as their recruiting feeding grounds to bring them into this plot. So whether the leader was hostile to Trump or not, it's the fact that this storming of the Capitol, which came about because of the president's tweeting, was seen as fertile ground to recruit these anti-government militia, white supremacists, however you want to describe it. So
gotta give them credit. They're not wrong. I mean, if a bunch of people show up at the state capitol in fatigues and wearing guns, you gotta at least assume. It's one of the few moments where how they're dressed does matter.
Bringing people together, that's what Trump does.
So what made me nervous about this story is that this feels like this could be, I mean, like, it feels, this has, you know, I don't want to be the doomsayer, but, or seem like a paranoid person. This feels like the first of many things that could happen, if, particularly if Trump loses in the coming year.
Tom, you know, we've been talking about this over the last couple of months. Obviously, it's vitally important for Trump to lose, but I think it's important for people to be realistic about the world that we're in right now. Him losing is necessary, but it's not sufficient. We are in for several years of social unrest, possibly violent social unrest, and this is, you know, this is one more data point that's the direction that the country's going.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask you on this show, Robert. I've heard a lot of like talks about how, you know, regardless of whatever the outcome is in November, there's going to be riots, there's going to be violence. I wanted to know from your opinion as someone who's been so involved in politics for so long, but like, how do you see, like, what is your prediction? Do you think Trump is not going to leave willingly? Do you think there is going to be a lot of violence if he loses in November? I'm just curious what your predictions are.
Well, part of it depends on, as it often does, what happens in Florida. If Florida seems, and because Florida has been doing absentee ballots and mail-in ballots for a long time, there's a stronger likelihood than not that we'll have a sense of who wins Florida election night. If Biden wins Florida, it will send a signal that that he's on the road towards winning the entire election, and it'll be harder, even if it takes a longer time for the Midwest states to come in and some of these others over the next few days. It'll send a signal that he's leading. If Trump ekes out a victory in Florida, and that means we'll have several days, if not at least a week, of other states counting. It's going to be very, very bumpy because he will be tweeting within a day or so that, oh, you know, they're using the mail-in ballots to steal the election, and that's going to be generating even more anger and fury in his base. But even that aside, the nation has gotten to such a point right now that even if it seems pretty clear cut that Biden's the winner, Trump is, to use Julie's phrase, is going to be the cornered raccoon, and he will be doing everything he can to sow chaos in the immediate, certainly in the immediate days after the election, and even if it becomes clear cut that Biden wins handily, he's going to be sowing chaos through January 20th, and yeah.
He has also been sowing chaos though for 4 years. I mean, you know, not to diminish at all like what's going to be very scary on November 4th, no matter what, but like he has been sowing chaos. You know, he's been like rousing these people and giving them carte blanche to do whatever they want for a long time. I think if I'm optimistic about anything, it's things like, and like, oh my gosh, so like to take comfort in this is is a lot to ask, but you know, Facebook took down all these QAnon accounts. Like America does not generally have mostly a militia problem. It has a lone gunman problem. It has like these lone assholes who go out and like hurt a bunch of people. But those, and it's to chaotic, devastating effect. But like those people, are isolated in their own actions. And like these militias can be taken down. These QAnons have had their information sources cut off. Like those things are happening to cut off like movements of this minority of people.
But only to a certain extent. Taking them off of Facebook is very much a big deal, and kudos to Facebook for doing something right for a change. But we are a far more interconnected social media reality culture than we were even 10 years ago. Certainly even than 20 years ago. So the thing that makes me a little bit nervous is that, okay, they're off Facebook, but what are the other either dark web or regular websites they're now using as their organizing way, and we may find out that suddenly the call goes out and there are these people in the streets, or guns outside of Joe Biden's headquarters down in Delaware in late November or early December, and I think we just have to be mentally prepared to be ready for an America that we may not recognize within the next few months.
This is a weird analogy, but I'm listening, and this is what keeps going through my head. It's sort of it's a very weird analogy. So, priest, here's a Jesus point. The first thing that happens when Jesus shows up someplace?
What?
I wasn't paying attention in school.
They try to kill him. They always try to kill him. Because theologically, there's this whole idea that in order to become like a good person, first you have to suck out the poison that's inside you. And when Jesus shows up, that's what happens. Just by being there, people are confronted by stuff inside themselves they don't like. So first they try to kill him, and then hopefully they look at themselves, right? So for me, how does this analogy apply? I'm not saying Donald Trump is Jesus. I will never say that. Yeah, but here's a weird parallel.
God, just those words uttered. Okay, keep going.
I sort of feel bad that I said them.
Some people think he is. I mean, that's
yeah.
That's part of the problem.
The Jesuits.
But I think that he has accomplished a similar thing in the sense that there are so many institutions. It's like something, Kate, I think that you said before. There are these institutions that we have believed in and believe are a certain way. And over the course of his presidency, we've realized, oh no, they're actually not. There are actually huge problems. There's huge problems in the police, and it's not just in one place. It's apparently the institution in general and the way that they respond to people of other colors, but also to just conflict. That there's like an enormous issue there in the way that they think about themselves. For me, ICE, from pretty much the first day of his presidency, of Trump's presidency, we've realized, if we didn't know it before, that organization is bankrupt, has absolutely no ethics whatsoever, and will just do whatever cruel thing either that they're told or feel like. So those are horrible, horrible realities, but it's important that we know about them so that if we get, God help us, I hope, a Biden presidency, a Biden-Harris government, that we can start to work on those problems, which have been there for a long time, and we haven't known about it or haven't been confronting them. And I think that, I hope we have a peaceful transition, and I get anxious when people start to talk like we might not, because I feel like the more we talk about the possibility that we might not, the more we give it sort of credibility as a possible thing that can happen. But it is a possible thing that can happen. And if it does, I mean, the only upside, and I think there is a weird upside, is that we realize like this too is an institution that we haven't looked at and isn't properly organized. Like a president, once they lose, shouldn't be able to say like, no, I don't think so, And we haven't had presidents that have really done that. But if we have one now that does, we'll have to learn a different way to understand when a new administration comes in. In Australia, if you get elected the prime minister, you take over. There's not 2 months of like, let's just work this out. Let's just have a peaceful transition. If our institutions can't allow for that, then we have to change those institutions.
I think one thing that happened this week that gives me some comfort and hope of a peaceful transition of power, and I want to be clear, just as Jim was not comparing Trump to Jesus, I am not suggesting that Mitch McConnell is a good person. But story came out that Mitch McConnell has not gone to the White House since August because he does not trust their COVID-19 social distancing rules. He was not at the rally for Amy Coney Barrett. He was not at any of that stuff. And why that stood out to me is it is a reminder to me that Mitch McConnell is his own villain. If whatever Trump does, if it's going to interfere with his future plans, he's not going to stick his neck out for him. And there is part of me that thinks that. And you're already starting to see, I think Tom Tillis in a event this week said, vote for me because the Republican Senate will be the check on the Biden presidency. You're seeing the covert language of
John Cornyn from Texas said, well, it certainly seems clear that the White House didn't take all the safeguards that they probably should have. Which, for a Republican senator, that's like saying,
particularly for Cornyn,
that's like saying, F you, they effed up. So you're right.
That reads to me again, like not saying that Mitch McConnell will. It's not the West Wing, and deep down, Mitch McConnell had a conscience the whole time. But it does seem to me like the message there is that they're not going to put Trump's plans ahead of their own. With that, I think we are going to call this a show. This was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Julie Sharbutt, for being with us. Thank you.
My pleasure. And please, can I just remind everyone that Melania said, who gives a fuck about Christmas? Because it's my favorite thing that's happened in months.
Which I gotta say, it made me kind of support and respect her for a moment.
The war on Christmas, it's coming from inside the house.
I stand firmly by this. I feel like she just said what each of the last 5 first ladies were saying.
To be fair, I agree.
Kate Moran, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for continually asking me to be out. I'm not sure why.
That's good. You bring a lot to it. And thank you, Jim McDermott, for being with us.
You're welcome. I do care about Christmas. I feel like
sure, yeah. It's a busy season for you.
Why is it important?
They get to stay up late that night.
That's when I get the presents, isn't that?
Yeah, cookies.
And finally, Robert George, thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you.
Congrats on the new venture. And another bunch of thank you. Thank you to Meghan O'Malley for our opening sketch. Thank you to Geoff Grimwood for joining us earlier. Thank you to Declan Shalvey and Jordy Belair for designing the Electoral Dysfunction Eagle. Thank you to Kevin Scott for designing our show animation. Thank you to Joe Ann Harris for the show theme music. And thank you, as always, to my buddy, my pal, my lifelong chum, Ned Thorne, for helping me put these together every single week. Now, to play us out with a special spooky song for the Halloween season, gonna star wipe us over to Meghan Sass. Ned Thorne, star wipe us to Meghan.
Hello, Electoral Dysfunction. Welcome to what is truly the spookiest of months, Halloween month. And I have a song for you about those of the undead community that thought they would have a much larger role in this here apocalypse and feel maybe a little bit cheated. This is Unrequited Zombie Love Song. I could be the perfect girlfriend. I would be a matchless wife and mom. I could be your favorite lover if it wasn't for this inclination to dive in for your liver and then gnash it in my teeth. Oh, baby, babe, there must be something wrong with me. I know it's hard to love a zombie, it is true. But won't you try to love this undead girl who's living just for you? You may think I'm kind of ugly 'cause my skin falls off my face, but looks are only fleeting. It's passion you can't replace. Those other girls are shallow and they'd only cause you pain. They like you for your body, but I love you for your brain, your juicy brain. I could make a cool companion, or at least a fairly faithful friend. I would be a lovely lover If I could only make these urges end, the urge to dive in for your liver and then shove it in my mouth. Oh, baby, babe, won't you show me what it's all about? I know it's hard to love a zombus, it is true. But won't you try to love this undead girl who's living just for you? Now, if you have a drink with you, you're gonna want to drink every time you hear a movie reference. Well, I once was so Night of the Living Dead, I only saw in shades of gray. But just 28 days later, I shoved that evil dead away. You've changed me for the better, reanimated with your love. Now I may be chewing his spleen, but it's you I'm thinking of. Your heart is just so pretty, I love to hear it beating in your chest. But till it's right here in my hands, I know I'll get no rest. Not that I need that much anyway, you don't sleep when you're dead. But this part of me that's living cannot shake you from my head. We would make a marvelous matchup. We could be an unparalleled pair. If I could control these longings, we would make a team extraordinaire. But I long to devour you completely and entwine your soul with mine. Oh, baby, babe, I never meant to cross the line. I know it's hard to love a zombie, it is true. But won't you try to love this undead girl who's living just for you?